Oh, thank you very much for joining us this evening in London. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon in California. And thank you very much for joining us this night or tonight in Lusaka, Zambia. Today we have one of the greatest African states women. And I take this honor to welcome you to Greatness TV. And on this program, presented by Sir Clyde River, the world's civility leader, he is going to take the opportunity to introduce to us our guest, Sir Rivers.
Ladies and gentlemen, sit down, hold on to your seats. We have with us today the 2012 African Woman of the Year. And you know what? I don't even want to minimize her down to the continent of Africa because she is a global icon of women. In my opinion, she is one of the greatest women voices in the world today. So again, I don't want to minimize her down to a continent because her impact and her influence is taking place. It's going all over the world. So much that I Change Nations, we're going to name an award in her name so that her image and what she stands for goes all over the world. So, world, I introduce you to none only Dr. Legend Justina Mutale. Welcome to Greatness TV.
Thank you so much, Dr. Clyde Rivers. I am so flattered by your introduction. Thank you very much. I'm totally honored to be invited to come on to Greatness TV, featuring great lives, and I think I could say that I am blessed to be one of those people that what I would consider living their greatness. And I'm grateful to Professor Patrick Businge for inviting me to this prestigious platform to have a chat with you and just share some of the things that have taken me my journey into greatness, so to speak. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for taking this time to be with us this evening. We're really very honored to have you. We are honored that you've taken time out of your busy schedule to be with us, to be with our viewers, and share your journey to greatness. So, could you unpack some of that journey to greatness? What has happened along the way from the person you are, African Woman of the Year, to become the person you are, the most inspirational woman of African origin, to become who you are, the humanitarian, the philanthropist, to become who you are as the founder of the Justina Mutale Foundation, to become who you are as someone who has created platforms where women are excelling or stepping into their greatness. Someone who is invited to the United Nations by government, the Commonwealth, to talk about African issues, talk about gender issues, talk about empowerment issues. So tell us about your journey to greatness.
I don't even know where to start from because I didn't set out to be on this journey to greatness. I think the journey to greatness kind of found me. So to speak, I am from Zambia, and I think when I look back, perhaps the thing that could have set me onto greatness was when I came into the United Kingdom and I realized that Zambia was not properly represented onto the social scenes, and I decided to start something that could profile Zambia and its people, being a very proud Zambian. And I wondered, why are Zambians not seen on the social scene in the UK? And I started something that was called Miss Zambia UK Beauty Pageant, which was a platform to profile Zambia and its people. Although it was a beauty pageant, I know that people sometimes frown upon beauty pageant, but for me, it was a creative and innovative way of showcasing what Zambia has to offer to the world. With the competition, when we interviewed our models and beauty queens on the stage, the questions were crafted in such a way that they were actually marketing Zambia. They would come out to mention, for example, what is Zambia's biggest tourist magnet, what Zambia got to offer on the investment forum, how beautiful the Zambian people are, how the good food that Zambia has to offer, all the things that a lot of people didn't know about Zambia. And that was way back in 1998. And in fact, I was surprised that at the first event that we held, there were a number of people that had not even heard of Zambia. Surprisingly enough, although Zambia used to be a former colony of the United Kingdom, it was under the British Empire, but there were some people who didn't know so much about Zambia. So a lot of people then started coming to me to ask about a lot of Zambia. When they needed to know things about Zambia, they had to come to me. For example, when they the president's office set up a diaspora desk at the at State House, the International Organization for Migration came to us under the Miss Zambia UK Beauty Pageant to try and do a survey of Zambians in the diaspora around the world in order to see how they, to try and work on what is called dual nationality, and also how the Zambian diaspora can then reconnect back home into Zambia. And then in 2011, when the report came out of 30 years since HIV and AIDS was announced to the world, and I read in the research and what was presented to see that in all the 30 years, even though the world had made a lot of technological and medical advancement, but the one thing that we hadn't done was to stop infections, new infections. And then I also realized that it was the world hadn't stopped most of the new infections were happening in young people under the age of 30. And this was 30 years since HIV/AIDS had been there, and 30 years since the world had been working on so many medical advancements, medical and technological advancements. But why were we still seeing new infections in young people? And as a mother, as somebody from Zambia and the rest of Africa was some of the parts of the world that were very highly negatively impacted with the HIV and HIV/AIDS pandemic. At its peak, the HIV and AIDS pandemic claimed the lives of very highly educated Africans in their prime. These were the managers, the policymakers, the political leaders of Africa. And to some extent, when I looked at that, I also realized that retarded the development of Africa. And also, coming from Zambia, Zambia is a very peaceful country up to today. And we've never had any wars. But what happened with the AIDS pandemic, we found that we then had an influx of orphans onto the streets who became street children. And as a mother, I didn't want the next generation to suffer the same fate that we had suffered, to have our children running onto the streets. So then I evolved the Miss Zambia UK pageant in what was called the Positive Runway, the global catwalk to stop the spread of HIV and AIDS. And this was working with young people and trying to speak a language that young people could understand, trying to present the problem of HIV and AIDS in a discourse that was appropriate to the 21st century young generation. So we started working, of course, coming from a background of working with these beauty queens. We had to utilize the beauty queens, models, and celebrities living in the 21st century. We know that young people are totally besotted with celebrity allure. So we teamed up with a lot of celebrities, models, and beauty queens as effective advocates to lay down this message, to be crystal clear to young people, and also to take away the stigma. Remember, AIDS was introduced to the world as a disease of shame. Mm-hmm. So we needed to show to the world that you don't have to be ashamed if you are this, because most of the children, in fact, that were born at the time that AIDS was introduced, even their parents couldn't tell them that they were actually born, through mother-to-child transmission, that they were born HIV/AIDS positive, because they thought that the community then would shun. One, the children would be so ashamed. Two, the community would also shun the children. But after 30 years, these children had grown up and they were now becoming sexually active. And they needed to know, one, know their status, to remove the stigma of having that status. Three, be able and free to let their sexual partners know that this is their status, because then they could easily negotiate sex. And in that way, we could at least limit, if we couldn't totally, I believe in prevention is better than cure. So my idea was to prevent the HIV/AIDS going into the next generation. My idea was based on trying to help the United Nations and the rest of the world secure what was called an AIDS-free generation and an AIDS-free world. So if young people knew their status and they would get tested and not be ashamed by doing that, then I thought that we would have, the next generation would have hope that they wouldn't suffer the same thing that we had suffered, that the HIV and AIDS would not move into the next generation. And then in do you still want me to go on?
Yeah, I wanted to check you just one, because we have one of our viewers from the United States, Anana, Dr. Anana. She's saying, thank you very much for your compassion for humanity. So, but as you continue talking, I'm feeling like, because I remember when I was doing my philosophy degree, one of the people I studied was Dr. Kenneth Kaunda, and one of his books was called African Humanism. So where does this compassion for humanity come from? Did Kaunda, for example, influence you or some other humanists? How do you, because you are doing great things, because you have that great compassion for humanity, that you are realizing where the problem are, looking for prevention and looking for a solution. So what ignites your heart to go into this kind of humanitarian work and philanthropy?
Yeah, as you have said, the background of having lived, I was born shortly after, just before Zambia got its independence. So my formative years were after Zambia got into its independence. So all the messages that were coming out from Dr. Kaunda were sinking in my head, and they're still stuck in my head, about one Zambia, one nation, living as the whole, or as one humanity, despite having, for example, in Zambia, we have about 73 languages, tribes, and dialects combined together. We have about 6 main languages, but of those many languages, of those 6, we have some tribes and dialects that are offshoots of those. So that makes it about 73 tribes. But also, we also have various religions practicing in Zambia. The majority, of course, is Christianity, but next to that is Islam. And after that, we have Hindus, we have all kinds we have Buddhists, and we have all of those people. But the thing is that because of President Kaunda's philosophy or motto of One Zambia, One Nation, despite all our differences, and also Zambia has always been a rainbow country. We have a lot of people with different skin tones, different features, and different beliefs, cultural beliefs, and also heritage. Even among the 73 tribes or the 6 main languages, there are different cultures and heritage from each and every region of Zambia. And we have now, during Kaunda's time, we had 9 provinces, but now we've got 10. But each province is, that's how the provinces are sort of allocated, because they have different, first of all, languages, but they also have different beliefs, cultures, and heritage. But for some reason, all of these years, we have managed to live happily ever after together as one big happy family, living in harmony, unity, and love, because of the philosophy of humanism from President Kaunda. But also overall, Africa has a strong philosophy that has been advocated, for example, by Desmond Tutu and Nelson Mandela, the philosophy of Ubuntu, that, yeah, I am because you are, and it believes that humanity has one common bond, and the suffering of others is our own suffering, and that we all belong to a greater whole. I have seen also some of the, a lot of things have been coming out of Africa, taken abroad and imported. For example, the United Nations at some point adopted this saying of "no one left behind." That is part of the philosophy of Ubuntu, and also Dr. Kaunda's philosophy of humanism, and the motto of "One Zambia, One Nation," because everybody has to move together. Just the other day, I had an interview where I gave the example of this American anthropologist that went to Africa and offered a prize. He found these young people playing in a field, and he offered them a prize and said the one that runs the fastest and gets to a certain point would win this prize. But he was surprised when all the children held their hands together and ran towards that prize. Then he asked them, "Why have you done that?" And the children said, "Well, if one of us is unhappy, then none of us will be happy. We all have to move together towards happiness." So that is the philosophy of Ubuntu. It's also part of Kenneth Kaunda's humanism and One Zambia, One Nation. And that is what I've always believed in. And also when I was growing up, Africa and my family, we believed in the idea of extended family. Extended family, for example, all your father's brothers, you'd refer to them as your father. And all your mother's sisters would be your mother. And in that way is, for example, if your father died, then it was easy for your uncle to take you in as his own. And you would just mix with the family like that. And in fact, although we did have cousins, but it had to be, I think, more steps down the line. Most of our first cousins are like our sisters and brothers up to today. That is how we believe it. So for me, it's to see that I always take it in me that any next person is my brother or sister, and I want the best for them. I grew up in a very big family, a family of 13. And coming into the world, I learned all the different characteristics through my family. And sometimes I can easily identify some people that I deal with as I go along in the world. So if somebody tries to play sometimes some funny tricks, and then I recognize them in one of my brothers who used to do that, or one of my sisters, and I know then how to handle that person.
And that's very interesting, because when I read one of Desmond Tutu's book, one of the things he says, and the main idea running through, is Ubuntu is Africa's greatest gift to the world. It is the greatest gift, but it's hidden. Well, this gift is composed of many facets. You have the aspect of communitarianism.
Yes.
You have communalism. You have the community. You have the empowerment. You have the working together. You have the compassion. You have the love. And actually, even Desmond Tutu says, Nobel Prize winner Desmond Tutu says that it is very hard to capture Ubuntu using any Western language. Why? Because there's more in Ubuntu than we can ever imagine. And then looking at the kind of society we live in, the circulated rivers at the moment, they are riots all over the place. So, and you have people demanding, I was talking about race and racism, and anyway, the society is getting divided day in, day out. So according to Your Excellency, Dr. Justina Mutale, how can Ubuntu be used to make the world a better place today?
It should be very easy, but I could say perhaps that is me hoping for a utopia. But when you think, for example, about colonization, when the colonizers came to Africa, they brought us Christianity. And Christianity, which I think Dr. Rivers has based his stuff on the 10 Commandments and also on the Golden Rule.
Yes.
on the golden rule of do unto others as you would want them to do unto you. And I think that is the most important thing. And this also comes back into the philosophy of Ubuntu and also humanism of doing unto others as you would want them done unto you. And the golden rule applies in all different religions. It's there in Hinduism, only using different words. It's there in Islam, it's in Christianity, it's in Hare Krishna, it's in all Buddhism and all the other religions of the world. So at the core of each and every religion, really what religion is, people misinterpret what religion brings to them. Mm-hmm. But at the core of it is this golden rule of humanity, treating each other as they want to be treated. And I know there's a lady, I can't remember her name, who had been taking this research and going to, for example, our sisters and brothers who are white-skinned brothers and sisters or blue-eyed, and asking them, giving an experiment of how they would feel if they were treated in the way that those with a darker skin are being treated around the world, and then you can see their reaction. But all that is an emphasis of Dr. Clive Rivers' belief in the golden rule. That is what it all comes down to. So for me, that is what I've always carried with me ever since I was young, being African, and of course, I said the colonialists brought to us Christianity at a very young age. I used to go to church, and sometimes then I would sit there and see the priest or the nuns preaching, and I think I want to go there. And in my mind, I saw that the priests were trying to save humanity from going to burn in hell. And it really used to terrify me because I was young. And then to think, I'd look at the person seated next to me in church and think, oh my God, if they're not doing the right thing, they are going to be burning in hell. Well, I didn't think I would because I was young and somehow my sins were not apparent to me. But I was thinking of the older people in the church, and I really didn't want them to go and burn in hell. So I started thinking, I really got to do something to save humanity from burning in hell.
So, Clyde Rivers, tell us about the golden rule and in relationship to Ubuntu and Christianity, and how all this can help the person on the African continent achieve greatness.
I beg your pardon?
Dr. Rivers.
What I think about this is 7.8 billion people in the world all have a contribution. And the only way that we can see that contribution is if we live the golden rule. Yes. And now with everything going on in the world, I have I just created an initiative called I Have a Solution. And there are 2 steps to this, 2 very simple steps. The first step is always ask the golden question.
Yes.
If you were on the other foot, would I be okay with the same treatment?
Precisely.
If the answer is no, then live the golden rule.
Yes. Sorry, something happened.
And the golden rule transcends religion.
Yes.
It is beyond religion. And it's aimed at creating the kingdom here on earth. The kingdom here on earth.
And see, Patrick, what it is there's an unintended consequence when you violate the golden rule. Because how you treat others, right now in America, we're looking at it. The actual consequence is you will be treated the same way. Mm-hmm. So we're saying, this is why, let me tell you something. No one does good because it's the right thing. People do good because the consequence. Now, the unintended consequence is that if you treat others bad, you are going to have the exact same treatment happen to you. So this is why what we're doing now, and Dr. Mutale, I'm going to have you on our banner next month. I'm putting out I Have a Solution banner every month. And I'm going to put key people on these banners so that the world understands that Black, white, brown, Asian, we're all working together in this.
Exactly.
We're all working together. And Dr. Mutale, tell us about your foundation with girls. Wait, first off, this This woman is literally picking girls up on her back, carrying them to the finish line and giving them a fresh start. Dr. Mutale, would you please tell us about your foundation and all the girls you've helped educate around the world? People, this is an icon. Go ahead.
Yeah, so like I did say how then I did the Miss Zambia UK beauty pageant to profile Zambia and its people in the UK to and around the world. Of course, we flew the Zambia flag because we got franchises all over the world. I think I had about 25 franchises. So taking Zambian girls around the world flying the banner and the the Zambian flag to say, yeah, here we are. Zambia does exist, and this is what we have to offer to the world. Then we moved on to the Positive Runway Global Catwalk to stop the spread of HIV and AIDS. It's a whole, it's a global catwalk because it's a catwalk that goes right around the world. We work with different models and beauty queens, and of course celebrities as our ambassadors in different parts of the world, all around the world. And then at some point, I used to work in the Commonwealth Secretariat, which is an intergovernmental organization in the UK under a kind of a diplomatic setting, and it's the Commonwealth is a group of countries that used to be under the British Empire, but then came together to help each other in technical assistance and other assistance that they need in order to develop and to have their feet on the ground, whether it be through economics, political, social, or any other areas of life. So my final years there, we're confined to the Social Transformation Programs Division, but more specifically, it was the gender section where we were advocating for gender equality and gender mainstreaming in Commonwealth countries. So when I left there and I started on my own, running my own organizations and doing stuff on my own, I ended up while I was in the gender section at the Commonwealth, I used to each year our gender section we used to be part of the team that attended the the United Nations Commission on the Status of Women. And this is the platform where women from all over the world would come together, come to the United Nations to review the progress that women have made towards, in their case, towards gender equality, towards achieving gender equality and the empowerment of women. So when I left the Commonwealth Secretariat, I didn't go back to the United Nations for a few years, I think about 5 or 6 or 7 years or so. And when I ended up going there under a different umbrella, I was surprised to find that they were still talking about the same things that we used to advocate for or talk about when I was in the Commonwealth Secretariat. And also to make it even more significant, I went back in what was called the 59th session of the, which was the 59th year of the United Nations Commission on the Status of Women. So for 59 years, the United Nations has been talking about how women can achieve gender equality, what do we need to do, and all of that. But also it was the conclusion of the Millennium Development Goals. And anybody that read through the Millennium Development Goals, you will realize that at the core of the Millennium Development Goals, was the achievement of gender equality and the empowerment for women and girls. And also it was the conclusion of the Millennium Development Goals, and the following year we were going to go into the Sustainable Development Goals. And once again, the Sustainable Development Goals had their core highlighting the need to achieve gender equality and the empowerment of women and girls. And also to my surprise and shock, I found that at the conclusion of the Millennium Development Goals, we had a march on Times Square that was called a historic march for gender equality. And having worked in issues to do with gender all these years, I knew that over the years, for almost a century, women had already been marching for gender equality. And I'm thinking, why are we still marching here? And to take it more personal, I have a daughter. I have my baby. That's my last born baby. And she was born in the year 2000, which was the beginning of the millennium. And of course, it was the inception of the Millennium Development Goals. So at that 59th session of the United Nations Commission on the Status of Women, my daughter then was about 15. I think she was a teenager. She was a teenager then. And then I am thinking, when my baby was born, we had the Millennium Development Goals. And now she's a teenager and we are still marching for gender equality. Then I'm thinking by the year 2030, the conclusion of the Sustainable Development Goals, she's going to be 30. She and her peers, all the young people that were born in the year 2000 will be in their 30s and they'll be the adults. And then they were, I think last year they were only a few years younger than, for example, President Macron, who was only 39 when he became president. And when you look at Jacinta Ardern, they were only 4 years younger than her. And then when you look at the young lady in Finland, see, there's a possibility they would be there. They have the potential to be the heads of state. And I am thinking, so I don't want, why are we for so many centuries, why has this gender equality and empowerment of women and girls eluded women for so many years, for all these centuries? Why has it been so impossible for women to achieve this so desired gender equality? So I came back from there, one, heartbroken that I had to find myself marching in yet again what was called a historical march for gender equality. And also it was the 59th session of the United Nations Commission on the Status of Women was reviewing 20 years of what was called the Beijing Platform, which had taken place in 1995. At the time that took place was the time when women around the world thought, yes, we are on our path to achieve this gender equality that has eluded us for so many years. And then to get there and find that 20 years later, women have still not achieved that gender equality. We are still fighting the same things that we fought in 1995, or going way back to the earlier marches for gender equality, for example, in 1911 or 1913. In fact, there's a South African woman called Charlotte that ran a women's march to a march for gender equality in South Africa in about 2011 or 2013. Also in about, 1911 or 1913, which is like almost a whole century later. You find that we are still fighting for this. So then I came back and thought that I really didn't want to see, for example, my daughter and all her peers that were born around the at the beginning of the millennium, at the inception of the Millennium Development Goals, having at the end of the Sustainable Development Goals in 2030, marching for this gender equality. So I decided perhaps I should try and contribute to this path or to this fight towards achieving gender equality. And that's how I started the Justina Mutale Foundation, more focused on trying to get women and girls into leadership positions. For I believe that until women can actually sit at that table, and until that table, the decision-making table at the highest level, at the level that decides the direction of the world or the agenda of the world, if we can have 50% women and 50% male perspective and 50% female perspective, then the world has a chance. In fact, we have a chance of saving the world, because so many things, for such a long time, the world has been run on the perspectives of men, and we have seen what is going on in the world. We have all these wars, a lot of unnecessary wars. We've also had, for example, in 2008, we had the economic crash, and it has been said that had the Lehman Brothers been Lehman sisters, perhaps we wouldn't have suffered that, because men are always very competitive and just competing against one another. In a way, the Lehman Brothers gambled the world away, just so one of them could win against the other. It's just unnecessary competition, instant gratification, and based on profit without due regard to human consequences of their actions. Because as for women, most of the time before you try to move or do the next move, you're thinking, oh, how will this impact on my family? How will this impact on my community? How will this impact on my country? And how will this impact on the world? Because it has been said that for those that study philosophy and also spirituality, you know that in each of us we have the feminine spirit and also the masculine spirit. But then the feminine spirit is more predominant in women, while the masculine spirit is more predominant in men. And also the masculine spirit is usually a selfish spirit. It's all about me, 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 me. The feminine spirit is about building the community. It's about bringing everybody together. It's about building the family, building the community, building the nation, and building the world at large, trying to secure human prosperity and progress for all. So that is why I decided I would start this foundation, and it would be my contribution for the world in trying to achieve human prosperity and progress for all. And I thought if I can inspire and also mentor and equip young women and girls with the necessary, the appropriate minds, and with the necessary skills, knowledge, information, and global power networks for them to, so that in 2030, they don't have to march with their feet, as we have all been doing, as my mother did, as my grandmother did, and my great-grandmother did, and which has yielded no result. But if we could equip them with a mind that intellect that can fight on equal footing with their male counterparts, perhaps by 2030, as aspired by the Sustainable Development Goals to achieve this 50-50 planet, then we really do, we might have a chance of achieving this gender equality finally. But that's just my little contribution. Of course, other people around the world are also working towards that, and it's not just up to me. And we are taking those baby steps towards trying to hope that by the conclusion of the Sustainable Development Goals, we might just achieve the what we are calling 50-50 planet. So we have an equal 50% perspective of men or masculine perspective and 50% feminine perspective at every high decision-making table that decides the direction of which way the world is trying to go, as the Chinese say, so we can have yin and yang coming together.
That's good. That's good. And you know, I think people have no idea what a balanced world would look like. See, and this is what we're doing with the golden rule, civility for all. Let's bring, because there's too much institutional bias,
Yes.
makes you walk for 30 years and you think you're gaining ground and you're back at ground zero.
Exactly.
This is why I like what's happening here is you are getting with institutional bias.
Yes.
This is one of the things that we're addressing and we're dealing with, and I think you on the front line. How come in this world we have institutional biases, and you know what? And it is so normal that what it does, it creates concepts that make you think you're gaining ground and you're always back at square one. Isn't that skillful how people do that?
Of course it is. That is why, for me, I decided rather than marching on the women marching on their feet, they've got to be. They have to be the intellect. They have to be smart in how they do this. They don't have to march in their feet. So with that, we also brought the my flagship thing with the foundation is, of course, we have about 4 core areas in trying to achieve gender equality or women's empowerment. So it's to get women into political participation, economic empowerment of women, but we also do conferences where we bring women together to discuss and network and inspire and mentor one another. But also we have the leadership and mentorship training program. And I think that would be if, just like as you have realized that it's all this institutional hurdles that make it impossible. Like I said, I have been reading and working on these women's problems, and I realized that the first year that the United Nations had what was called the Year for Women's Empowerment was about 1946. Soon, I think that was 2 years after the United Nations was formed. So up to every year, we have some kind of a year for women's empowerment, but that doesn't work. But this is because the people that are making these decisions, the women are not there at the table. When you look at for example, the G7, most of the time, I think the last time I looked, which was December, just before COVID-19, there was a peace conference or something in Europe or somewhere. I think there was only Angela Merkel as a woman there, because then in the UK we had already lost
Theresa May.
And then you are thinking, what can she do there? How does she then convince her colleagues at the table to think in the way that women think? Even when you go to the G20, sometimes there's only Theresa. They was Theresa May and Angela Merkel. Now there's no Theresa May. Most of the time it will be just Angela Merkel, maybe with one more from the Scandinavian countries or other countries. But there's no balance. There's no balance of 50-50 to bring that perspective to the table. And it's a very easy concept that says who feels it knows it. So as a woman, you know what needs to be done to turn things around for the world in order to take in order to stop this institutionalized discrimination against women. For likely enough, for me, where I grew up in Zambia, I come from a background of very powerful, strong, assertive women. Some people would have said I could even go ahead and say aggressive women, but these are women that are women go-getters, women that just went into the world and got what they wanted to get. For example, from my mother's family, a woman rules the kingdom. So men bow to her and they have to report to her as the leader of the kingdom, of course. And so it's a matriarchal community, so to speak, or society. But before that, let me just retract and say that according to history, the history that I know, for thousands and thousands of years, African women used to be equal or even more superior to their male counterparts. So, and this was that status quo was upset when colonialism came in, when we moved from the subsistence economy into the monetary economy. Because in the subsistence economy, of course, the husband, wife, and children used to go to till the land together, and they grew the food together, and they ate off the land. So everybody was contributing in equal footing. And of course, sometimes men can be lazy, so the women contributed more. And so the women were more superior than their men.
Well, that's why I wanted to say what went wrong. So when I reflect in most of those African societies, women were in leadership.
Exactly.
Women led. Even in some of those societies, it's a woman who goes to marry the man, not the other way around. So
exactly.
When did it go wrong and why? And how can we make it better?
As far as I know, it went wrong when colonialism came, or colonization came to Africa. Because when colonization came to Africa, they insisted on a monetary economy, which was a move, a change from the subsistence economy to now the monetary economy. And the monetary economy emphasized on men going to work. It also emphasized on that you can only eat or if I have a livelihood if you earned money, as in coins and notes.
Mm-hmm.
I was just saying this to the other interview I had 2 days ago. If both of you have read the book by Barack Obama of Dreams of My Father. There's a chapter where he talks about his great grandfather in Kenya, who one day he was seated there in his hut that he had built himself on his own God-given land. And suddenly he had a knock at the door. It was one of the messengers from the colonial government that said to him, "Oh, from such and such a date, you have to start paying tax for this land that you live on and for this hut that you are living in." And he had then asked, "Oh, but how will I pay that tax? Because I live off the land." And the messenger said to him, "Yeah, you have to get up and go to work." And that is how Barack Obama's great-grandfather or grandfather was then picked up to go and work as a cook for the governor, the colonial governor in Kenya then. So this actually tilted the whole status quo, because then the men became the breadwinners, the ones bringing home the bacon, so to speak, as they went out to earn the notes and coins, as in money, in order for them to start now buying food rather than eating off the land. And that way the African women then lost their power, they lost their claim to the land and all the other stuff that they could do. But before that, a lot of African societies were matriarchal and they prospered, they highly prospered. When you look at, for example, Cleopatra, a lot of people talk about Cleopatra when they just equate her for example, in the arts industry and theater, when they think of her of having, being with Mark Antony and Julius Caesar, but they forget that she was actually a very capable leader. She grew the Egyptian empire during her time. And we also have, for example, Catherine the Great of Russia, and what she did with Russia, also extending that empire, the Russian empire, to so many other places, to Crimea, to Poland, and to, all that area. She brought it back in because her husband, Peter, did not afford to do that. But it was Catherine the Great who grew the Russian empire. So you see, even although Russia is not part of Africa, but I'm just trying to show how even before, outside of...
in the Middle East, for example, the lady who started off universities.
Exactly. That was Cleopatra. She started an institute for women's education too, just as well. Just like Catherine the Great did. So women have always have this capability, but also it's been said, and also research and studies have shown that. For me, I believe that the only way that the world can achieve human prosperity and what is called progress for all, as intended by the United Nations, is when we have enough women in leadership positions. As you know, if a child born of a rich woman will automatically lead an affluent life. Whereas a child born, even if it's from a rich man, it depends who the mother is, because it could be a rich man who the mother had outside of wedlock or as an extended relationship, and the father doesn't even look back to see what child he left there. So women always take their children along with them, and the studies and the research have also shown that a child born of an educated woman will automatically get educated. We have a lot of educated men having children with women in the villages. Sometimes you see even with the people that work in international developments and all these projects that are happening in Africa, they'll go there, work for 3 months and leave children that are born there, and they fly back to their countries, and the child won't even know how to reach the father, and the father has no idea whatsoever what is happening in the life of the child that he bore in that country while they were doing that. But women, it's very rare that a woman would leave their children behind. Women always take their children with them. So, of course, a world that allows women to be in leadership automatically allows the children to be uplifted and automatically spreads the human prosperity and progress for all.
Man.
That is brilliant. True, yes, Dr. Rivers.
And see what we have to do, and what I'm doing with our global world civility.
Yes.
We have to create a stage for dialogue.
Yes.
Dr. Mutale has to be on different stages around the world, and I'm not looking to put us on any other stage. We will create our own stage
Mhm.
so
Yes.
that our narrative is heard. See, this is a narrative that people don't hear, and that's on purpose. So what's happening is now we are creating different platforms and different stages because Dr. Mutala needs to be heard in every country of the world, and so do women. See, God didn't make women less than men because God lives in women also.
Yes.
So God is in a woman, he's not a lesser God than in a woman. So now there's only half the Holy Spirit in a woman, and the
Precisely.
other way, we have to get rid of the insanity and say, let the one with the gift of God lead the way. And Dr. Mutala, it's where at I Change Nations, when we establish your award, that award will become the Nobel Prize. No, I think man, women need to have an actual greater award than a Nobel Peace Prize. So
Awesome.
let's kick this thing to a whole nother gear. And I'm serious. We're going to do an award in the name of Dr. Mutala because hear this. If we don't keep your legacy alive, shame on us, not shame on you, shame on us. So we will make sure your legacy is known around the world. I want one of our publishers to do a book on her story, Dr. Businge, and let's make these things happen so that a generation can actually touch a modern day hero and not just read about them when they're dead.
Indeed. And actually, I was almost going to move to the World Greatness Award and the World induction to the World Book of Greatness. But before I introduce that to our viewers, I'm going to just show you the moment Dr. Justina Mutale became the leading light of greatness. Yes.
Justina Mutale, if you don't know who that woman is, she was 2012 African Woman of the Year. She has a foundation. Yeah. She's helping women everywhere in the world. She also, with her foundation, she raises scholarships so she can send smart girls and boys around the world to be educated. Because money should never hold up an education. So she has laid her life down for that cause. No, she's humble too, but I brag on her because she's all over the world. She's on every magazine, leading woman of the year. It was 10 magazines this year. So Justina, we love you and thank you so much.
Yeah.
And yes, so the World Greatness Awards, that was in January, and it was a great pleasure having you and being honored in the presence of great men and women for all the great work you've been doing. So tell us about your feelings and how that moment was transformational for you.
Let me just say that over the years, I've had so many honors, awards, and accolades recognizing some of my work. And each time I get one, it just gives me a total surprise. And sometimes I think, I know that we should really be saying, yes, this is for me and all that. But sometimes I think, how come I am getting this? And then I see the previous year I had been listed in what was called what was it called? Power of the most the most reputable people on earth.
Yes.
And I thought, wow, this is the ultimate. I can't get any other awards or any other recognition after this. And then to then suddenly receive the letter that you sent to me saying that Dr. Rivers had nominated me for the World Greatness Awards, I just thought, oh, wow. So it was a great feeling, but also I think it was a feeling that was got in a way in a daze and kind of disbelief, so to speak.
Yes. Thank you so much. Because what is happening is that there are lots of people walking, but they might be walking in the darkness. There are lots of people walking. They might not be knowing where they're walking to. They just find themselves walking. I was telling one of my friends, said, look, when you're going to shop for shopping, you always make a shopping list.
Yes.
When you're going to, you're going to catch a train to go to another place or for holiday, you plan for it. But when it comes to life, most people don't plan. They just live.
Yes.
They just walk through life. But the award you got, the leading light of greatness, shows that you are light to the people. By your achievements, you are light. There are people looking to you. There are people that you're inspiring. I look towards you. I look towards the achievements you made. That you're a role model, and that's what you're transforming. That's how you're transforming others by your life. You are not just giving the message, but you are the message. You are the message, and that's why we honored you with a leading light of greatness, but as well inducting you into the World Book of Greatness, because you are the message that you bring. When the people see the light, then they can follow. Even if there's darkness along the path, there are challenges as along the path, the light will continue shining, then they can reach that light. So I wanted to end this interview by you sharing with us some of the things that you have in store for us for the future. What are your plans now? And how can we as well embrace your vision, whether it's through leadership, through your writings, through your different institutes, and how we can participate as well so that we can as well develop ourselves and become great?
Yeah, so I have done a number of books as a co-author, contributing chapters to different kinds of books around the world. But I'm coming up with my own series on leadership, and it's really focused on women leadership in different areas. I can't say much about it because I don't want to preempt the surprise that
Yes.
I have to hand to the world. But also that will be the basis of what I might be considering to be, although we already under the foundation do leadership and mentorship programs for our women to go into political participation and economic empowerment, and of course social and other areas of life. But I think that series of books will be the basis for a kind of women's leadership academy that we are due to launch hopefully after the COVID, or even during the COVID, we would still be able to do that. And extending to that, because I have been running the scholarship program, of which mostly is taking making partnerships with different universities around the world and going around and begging for scholarship places for our underprivileged young women and girls from Africa who come from very poor backgrounds, but they show academic excellence, and they are so academically talented, but their families are so poor that they can't afford to send them to university. Sometimes it's a struggle. We have formed quite a number of relationships and partnerships with a lot of universities around the world who give us these scholarship places, but it's never enough, because then the list of young people, young women and girls, and also boys that are coming to us to seek these scholarships keeps growing. So now I've been thinking with my team that perhaps it's time that we start our own university. Then our children will not have to be left behind. So that will be announced perhaps in the new year. Yeah, those are some of the things. We were this summer going to hold the World Women World Summit on Women and Girls, which was going to be an intergenerational dialogue where we bring women and girls from all over the world, from both the developed countries and the developing countries, from the Western world and Africa, and bring everybody together to inspire and motivate and one another, and perhaps to also mentor and create networks and partnerships on how to work together, and also to help the world, of course, achieve what is called a Planet 50-50. There's something that the United Nations is working on called Generation Equality, and they are supposed to hold some conferences. The first one we were supposed to do in this year marks 25 years. I remember I spoke about the Beijing platform in 2015 was 20 years since, but this year was a very prominent year because it brought together a confluence of a lot of anniversaries in the feminine movement around the world. So it was going to be 25 years of the Beijing Platform for Action, which we should have reviewed in March at the United Nations Commission on the Status of Women. It was also going to be 41 years since what is called the United Nations Convention on the Elimination of all kinds of discrimination against women. 41 years, but we still have the discriminations. The Beijing platform, and also we are going to have, I think it's 20 years of what is called United Nations Security Council Resolution 1325, and this is to do with women, peace, and security. Remember, up to now we have women suffering in conflict. There's sexual violation of women in conflict. When you look at the Congo and the places like that, it was also going to be 10 years since the UN Women was formed. It was also going to be, it is actually 75 years since the United Nations was formed, but also we were going to review the first 5 years of the United Nations Commission on, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals.
Yes.
So it's a whole confluence of all of these, but with the generation equality going towards the platform, Planet 50-50, we were, of course, going to address that at the United Nations Commission on the Status of Women in New York. Then we had two other conferences, one scheduled one in Mexico and one in Paris, but we didn't have one in Africa.
Not yet.
My foundation then decided, okay, we are going to do a summit, a world summit on women and girls, an intergenerational summit on women and girls that we had planned to hold in Nairobi in Kenya, which is Africa. So we could bring the whole world into Africa so they can see what Africa has to offer and how Africa was going to contribute towards the achievement of this generation equality and Planet 50-50. Because, of course, the US was holding this Commission on the Status of Women in New York. We were going to have Mexico. We were also going to have Paris, but nothing in Africa. And I, in my travels and in a lot of things that I work, sometimes also, even when I see statistics talking about how things are working on, for example, I'm a Rotarian.
Yes.
Once we had a speaker talking about statistics about COVID-19 and all of that, and he had all these tables and statistics, but he had nothing about Africa. you see, sometimes they also show like the best universities in the world, and you find there's no university at all from Africa. The best this and that in the world, and Africa is no, they don't mention Africa. And I wonder, and once I had the profound moment for me, I think, was when I attended this cultural and diplomacy conference, where one of the diplomats stood up and said, the world has been, the past few years, the world has been running on 3 cultures. And he went on to say, I think he said that the
time for Africa has come.
Yeah, no. He said the Eastern, I think Asia, yeah. Asia is a run on the culture of hope. And that the Middle East were running on the culture of humiliation because of, all these wars that had been happening in that there. And then they said the Western world, which would be the Europe, UK, and USA, had the culture of fear and insecurity. And he ended there because he said 3 cultures. So I asked him, but what is the culture that is running Africa? So a lot of time you find that Africa is left out. So to do with women, with my organizations, I thought, we'll do this summit on intergenerational summit on women and girls and hold it in Africa. It's a pity that we now have COVID-19 and people can't travel. Can't easily travel that much, so perhaps we may have to hold this as a virtual summit. Although I would have loved it to be a summit that so a lot of our attendants can actually come and see the beauty of Africa and what Africa has to offer.
Oh yes, and maybe that could even become a yearly summit every year.
Yeah, it was going to be a yearly summit. This was just going to be a launch.
Amazing. Thank you so much for the great work, and it's been a great pleasure having you on Great Lives, and continue. We do appreciate the work you do, and we appreciate what you do for the world and the message you bring, and the message you're continuing to bring to our young people, inspiring them. Now we know where to go when we need women empowerment. Now we know when we have those children from disadvantaged families. They want a step, they want someone to hold their hand to the next step, which is the Justina Mutale Foundation. Thank you so much. Just to be sure, so which website can they come to if they need more information about the foundation?
I have several websites. I have one in my own name, justinamutale.com. We have the Justina Mutale Foundation .com, and also with Positive Runway, like I said, the HIV and AIDS Global Catwalk, which is now working towards trying to stop the spread of COVID-19 or the coronavirus. That is positiverunway.org.
Thank you so much.
And everybody else can reach me on different social media platforms. It's just at Justina Mutale, and the easiest way is just to Google me, Justina Mutale, and they'll be able to find information about me.
Amazing. Thank you very much. And our viewers, thanks so much. And they say your work must be saying your work is very inspirational. Elizabeth Lucas is saying as well, you are an inspiration to all. And it says it's possible to have your own university. Yes, it is possible.
Yes.
Professor Mateus Mutola watching from Mozambique is saying congratulations as well. Dr. Linda Laura from the Silicon Valley in California saying awesome.
Thank you.
Caggiano, I'm not sure where she's currently located, but she's very beautiful work you're doing, and thank you for changing the world. And lots of other viewers, Michael Bemba, he was asking, oh yes, is this lady from Zambia? Oh yeah, she could feel you. Yes. We have Rebecca Harper again, Family Civility from the United States. Amazing work, Your Excellency. Again, you are very inspiring in the work that you do for the people, and you continue changing the world. Donald Tolson from watching from Florida, Sun City. Sunshine State, not Sun City, Sunshine State. Yes, Julian saying it's a great legend. You met her during the World Greatness Awards.
Yes,
And
yes.
we're looking forward to having you as well for the upcoming World Greatness Awards. Hopefully, we're just watching the space every day now. It's very hard to make long-term decisions, making decisions every day. So we are hoping to host you again for the upcoming World Greatness Awards on the 15th of August. Thanks so much. And to all our viewers, thanks so much for being with us, 75 minutes almost, for being with us. And it's been a great pleasure. It's been Dr. Patrick Businge hosting Her Excellency Dr. Justina Mutale and Sacred River, who's just left us for another engagement. Thank you. So let's end the show.
Thank you so much.